Hello, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Valeria and this is the Off-Road Trench. This video was made to continue the topic of communication between people. I decided to make a separate video about the behavior and communication of a blogger with those people who are not associated with creating content and making business on social networks. My friends raised this topic and suggested me to talk about communication of bloggers with their viewers and their approach to life. How should a blogger communicate with ordinary people? Does he share his values through his blog? Does a blogger put himself above other people? Does he use popularity for his own purposes? Does he realize his whims at the expense of the loyalty of his subscribers? How does he choose a social circle? Let's talk about this in more detail. So, what is the difference between a blogger and ordinary people? How do the brain and hormones react to success? Can everything be bought for money? Do bloggers abuse power? Am I imposing my opinion? What we can say about behavior of the viewer? And how should a blogger behave? First of all, I must say what I mean by ordinary people so as not to offend anyone. I mean those people who are not associated with the world of content production and with professional management of social networks for profit. I do not put bloggers above anyone else. On the contrary, I think that the blogger is the same person and he shouldn't forget about it. And if you find this terminology inappropriate, then please suggest your version in the comments. What do bloggers have the ordinary people don't? Popularity, recognition, authority, influence. The term influencer emerged thanks to these characteristics. A blogger has the power to influence public opinion. Your opinion, that is, your thoughts, your choices, your priorities. But you are the only one to bear the consequences. On the other hand, if you use social networks for certain tasks, consciously and limitedly, then you are subject to this influence much less. Still, other people are subject to it, and one day you realize that the society around you is divided according to very incomprehensible interests and talks about things that you do not understand. As you know, I talked about this in the video number 21 and 45. In 99%, popularity to a blogger comes not thanks to his own abilities and efforts, but thanks to sponsors, advertising, and money. And all this has a commercial purpose, that is, making a profit. Very often, using one power and popularity and manipulating the audience to gain advantage is part of this game. The main task and interest are money and profit. Profit is based on fame and popularity, because thanks to it, advertisers come to bloggers because they know that their ads will be seen by a certain number of viewers. Companies offer collaborations, also as joint advertising. Bloggers also offer realizing of joint ideas in order to mutually increase popularity. The blogger is recognized and treated in a special way. Companies give him discounts, send him gifts, provide free services, and often they do it not on their own will. The more people talk about a blogger, the more people know about him, the better for the blogger. Moreover, everyone knows that hate is also a strategy to increase popularity. If there is a well-developed strategy, then it is possible to twist it in one's favor and increase popularity and numbers. Therefore, one way or another, the blogger strives for success, and if this is his main goal, then sooner or later he achieves it. What happens next? The success that a person dreams of covers several important areas of life at once. Basic needs, and success covers it dozen times over. Recognition from society, and it is perceived by the brain as adoration, love, and worship. Success covers the need to be important and needed by many people at once. In addition to basic needs, it allows you to purchase material things that are considered a symbol of luxury. Success puts people on a pedestal. success overshadows and distorts reality. A dizzying sense of self-importance makes a person extremely happy. It gives self-confidence, confidence in capabilities, new dreams, goals, and motivation to fulfill them. This is wonderful, but at the same time, it has very negative consequences. This feeling is a consequence of the action of a hormonal cocktail, where the main ones are endorphin, adrenaline, and dopamine. The word endorphin consists of two words, endogenous morphin, where endogenous means produced from within. This is a very potent mixture of hormones, which leads to a feeling of boundless happiness, permissiveness, a feeling of omnipotence. These feelings give a lot of energy, motivate for new results, desires, goals. Dopamine brings the anticipation of even more success in order to get even more. This success and emotional background become an addiction. These are very strong feelings that a person wants to experience again and again. According to research by psychologists, this dependence is comparable to drug addiction. People get hooked on emotions and abuse those things they can get these desired sensations with. Demons awaken in a person: greed, avarice, self-interest, arrogance, permissiveness, a sense of self-superiority, excessive self-confidence. Unfortunately, many successful people, including bloggers, forget about the boundaries of what is acceptable and permissible. At the same time, the concept of success is quite relative. We can see in front of us an ordinary person with average demands, work, and finances. But he personally will evaluate himself inadequately, since the sense of his own superiority will give him satisfaction and pride in himself. And the person will feed his ego by any means and become an outstanding figure. A person forgets who he really is and where he came from, and begins to live a different reality. In this other reality, success, money, popularity, and luxury become priorities. The higher you rise, the more you want, and more money seems close and achievable, and problems disappear. You want to reach for this reality. You want to immerse yourself in this world, although it is not real and very far from the real world. Money, popularity, and public recognition provide new opportunities. And opportunities are exactly what the world is so greedy for, and either what people don't have or what people don't take advantage of because of their own stupidity or laziness. Therefore, becoming successful and receiving opportunities in the form of connections, profits, projects, person goes crazy. Of course, an intelligent person will try to immediately gain a reputation, build a strategy for further development, create new sources of income and new opportunities for himself. But often, success results in thoughtless consumption and attempts to join elite lifestyle. From a psychological point of view, this topic is quite well covered. But the question is how much a person wants to consume and whether he is going to stop and reconsider his approach to thoughtless spending of money. This is also very important because successful success, money, and consumption of everything possible establish such a position in the world as a norm, instead of establishing the norm of reasonable consumption, satisfying basic needs, and self-realization. This lifestyle leads to the fact that it is important for a person to communicate only with those who will bring him benefit, profit, profitable acquaintances, useful projects, and in every possible way help him establish himself at the pedestal of success. A person changes his opinion about socialization and doing business. His attitudes about who is worthy of his attention and who deserves his communication change. And in 99% of cases, ordinary people do not fall into this category, although thanks to ordinary people, the blogger became the one who he has become. Although it is logical that people meet based on interests, among other things, the circle of acquaintances now has many filters. Bloggers prefer the same bloggers and people with a similar status and standard of living. They choose certain activities and places to visit. Firstly, it is a separation from real life. Secondly, it is a very strong narrowing of one's horizons and understanding of the picture of the world. And thirdly, it is an obsession with a certain approach to life. Success allows you not to think, but to hire special people to develop and maintain this success. They have a business strategy for sources of income, prices for their services, methods for retaining and developing popularity. And in 99% of these cases, there is a team of employees: marketers, SMM specialists, advertisers, sales managers, mentors, and coaches. This makes it possible not to think about how things really work, how business works, and how things are interconnected in business. And the way of life, choices, actions are based not on real life needs and logic, but comes from the opposite. I want it this way, I deserve it, I can afford it, why not, why is this bad, and this leads to permissiveness. What is it, and why does it happen? Abuse of power is the use of one's advantages for evil, where by evil I mean cunning strategies, deceptive schemes, omissions, distortion of information, while taking advantage of the immunity that is received by popularity, power, acquaintances, social circle, number of subscribers, luxurious lifestyle, advertisers, and so on. Having these advantages, the blogger knows that he is loved, accepted, and his opinion is important, and therefore certain things from his mouth can become an indisputable truth, a popular opinion, a viral topic, a subject for discussion, and so on. And if a blogger makes a mistake, he can be forgiven for it. Reputation is very important, but in order to preserve it, it is enough to follow a number of generally accepted rules. These rules exist in any community, as I said in the video about communication between people. Sometimes it is enough for a blogger to make a public apology, and people will forgive him, even if his words are a marketing ploy. This is hypocrisy to the rest of the world and a lie to oneself, since a person presents himself as someone other than he is in order to earn or regain trust. However, it works because many people simply absorb content without thinking about anything. Also, the viewer successfully succumbs to manipulation and dramatic pressed out plots, although giving up social networks for at least a month and thinking about your own desires, plans, and your life in general would make your life more qualified than watching someone else's life for decades. Moreover, most often this life is just a picture. In addition, success and popularity give a blogger a strong feeling that people owe him. They must provide him excellent services by default, they must provide him free services, get his desires, forgive disrespect, inappropriate jokes, and forgetfulness. Often, in his opinion, people must give him more than what is paid for. They must recognize him and treat with submission and admiration. They must give gifts. The list goes on, but this attitude is not normal. But a blogger, as a popular person, has one more advantage. If he doesn't like something, then with the court publication of information on the blog, he can destroy the life of someone who didn't please him. Permissiveness gives freedom to the ego, whims, thoughtless actions, and self-affirmation at the expense of other people. And with a certain mood or attitude, a popular person believes that he has the power and right to humiliate another person, demand a certain attitude from him, make unreasonable claims, and in any other way assert himself at the expense of others. And he will never admit it. If a blogger believes that another stranger didn't treat him with the required degree of fawning, then he can exaggerate the situation and expose the person to everyone. This will raise a wave of unfair condemnation, discussion, scandal, and hate. And this can result in further dismissal, loss of profit and peace of mind, and even pursuit and litigation. Thus, due to inappropriate behavior, one's own whims, and the indulgence of the ego, one person can easily destroy the life of another person, tremble, and then pass by, since the person means nothing for the blogger, and in the modern world, it is customary to deal with one's own problems on one's own. But the other person doesn't have to know any popular blogger or treat him in a special way. No one is obliged to recognize him in a restaurant and serve him free desserts. No one is obliged to wash his car for free at a car station. No one is obliged to give him free clothes to test and evaluate it on his channel. No one is obliged to give priority in the queue for services, to provide the best hotel room, or tolerate disrespectful behavior towards others. And I would like for both the bloggers themselves and those who encounter accidentally them to remember this. The blogger himself must understand that he must have a number of rules and must limit himself in the number of things, treating another person better than himself and trying to become a better version of himself. By treating another person less than you treat yourself, you can never ever become a better person. I understand that my words in this video may not fully show the naked truth or may not reflect the situation harshly enough. Moreover, I understand that you can perceive my words as limiting actions, limiting free will, imposing my opinion, or creating a framework for actions of another person. I will explain why I talk about how people should communicate with people or how a blogger needs to communicate with people. Simply because on the internet there is so much information noise, garbage, information that leads to degradation that, in my opinion, it makes no sense for me to do anything on the internet other than those actions that can improve the situation. My words may not be the complete truth. They may not reflect the truth as it is, or you may have a completely opposite point of view. But firstly, I try to convey information in such a way that it reflects the current situation as much as possible. Secondly, I try to raise interest in these topics and make them discussed. And thirdly, I want to convey the idea that there are problems that need to be solved. And if this video and others on my page provoke a reaction from people that we need to take action and change our lifestyle, then I partially have completed my task. The problem is that bloggers themselves do not understand this. They adhere to a number of rules that was developed in this system. And being inside the system and doing according to the rules of the system, it is difficult to understand the direction of social standards, choose your sincere goals, understand what benefit you want to bring to society, and why do it when you already have money, travel, recognition from society, a favorite business, friends, and other things that relate to the 7 steps of Maslow's pyramid. By the way, I believe that it is distorted and inverted, and the values have been replaced. But we can talk about this later, if there is a desire. Amid this misunderstanding, it is almost impossible to understand how to implement useful ideas on social networks without leaving the system. And if interests are fueled by fears, for example, losing profit, losing advertisers, returning to the previous so-called pure lifestyle, the inability to reach new heights, then the blogger is slave to his occupation and a slave to the system. Despite all his successes, he is not free. Perhaps activities of many bloggers is nonsense that shouldn't bring money in a socially useful society, and they know it. Then they definitely will not be able to take the risk of creating something worthwhile and changing the world for the better, at least at the current level of development. Therefore, unfortunately, people do not take full advantage of the opportunity that they have. A very small percentage think about the fact that they can make the world a better place by implementing useful projects, gathering caring people, telling the truth about what is happening, receiving a quality education and becoming a professional in an important field, attracting attention to international problems, using their connections to influence negative situations. In turn, the viewer also doesn't always treat the blogger with understanding and respect. There are different opinions and attitudes towards the blogger. I will give the main ones, and in my opinion, some are quite rude. The viewer believes that the blogger owes something to someone. Of course, a blogger assumes certain obligations and bears certain responsibilities. but often the viewer is by default biased towards the blogger expressing his worst thoughts in the most impartial form. And he can justify this by saying that this is the truth or this is my opinion. Another justification is that if the blogger exposes his life, shows everyone what he does, then he must be prepared for criticism. Also, someone makes the excuse that the internet is an evil thing and life in general is cruel. Often, people have an established picture of the world and believe that they are obliged to impose it on others, without observing any personal boundaries, without asking whether their advice is needed, considering themselves by default more experienced and correct, and having a categorical, peremptory approach. Well, I feel sorry for the children of such people. If a blogger can block such a person or not to react in any way, then the child will be considered property and must do what he is told. Criticism is a very destructive action for the one it is directed to. If you are a fairly independent and self-confident person, then you understand this. If there is criticism addressed to you, you know how to work with it. Most likely, there are no people around such a person who will try to lower his self-esteem, limit his activities, or make him dependent on someone. This is a separate topic for discussion. I am not ready to discuss this yet, but if you are interested, write it in the comments. But often, a person is quite strongly influenced by criticism, and this is due not only to the lack of personal boundaries, but also to humanity, when a person takes to heart the opinions of other people about his creativity and his activities, when a person is responsive and kind and tries to do something good, to be useful, to help. In this case, criticism of other people, especially bilious manipulators, can have a very strong impact on a person's life as a whole when he withdraws into himself, refuses communication and self-realization, stops creating. Perhaps he will have to resort to the help of specialists to restore his psychological health. Sometimes, unfortunately, criticism can break a person, and you need to remember that you don't need to be cruel, tough, sarcastic. And moreover, you need to remember that these things are primarily within you. The following information is both for the viewer and for the blogger. If you, as a person, wants to decide something, to have influence on something, wants your opinion and you yourself to have meaning, value, weight, then behave accordingly. It will not happen by itself. And on the internet, on social networks, you are still a person, a human, and you bring there what is inside you. If you carry criticism, envy, hatred, if you do not observe the rules of politeness, the boundaries of what is permitted, then you are a person of average quality. If in addition you do not create anything useful, then perhaps you, as a part of society, are even destructive to it. The internet can provide much more opportunities for self-realization, creation, and influence on something than actions in the real world, because on the internet it is sometimes easier to find a company with interests, to interest people regardless of location, to have influence on any issues, and whether you are a blogger or not, whether you want to be famous or prefer to remain in the shadows, you can make yourself matter. And this is part of your self-realization. Do not miss the opportunity to use the internet for this. Moreover, I talked about the role of the viewer in the video number 21. Consider this information not as a call for donations to someone, but as an opportunity to become a participant in this world. And do not forget that although the internet is a separate world, virtual reality, it is part of the real world, and firstly, you cannot live only on the internet, and secondly, the consequences of activities on the internet will come into the real world and affect both other people and you. Remember the butterfly effect. First of all, remain human and follow norms and rules of communication that are acceptable in any country. You can learn them from the video number 46, or you can find out them on your own. Since, as usual, I give principles and advice based on high morality, human values, and analysis of actions. This doesn't mean that I always follow them myself. I do not pretend to be ideal, but it is the presence of principles, humane rules, highly spiritual things, discipline that will make the world a better place. And if we talk about socially pressing issues, about how to improve areas of life, about solving international problems, then we cannot do things that will only aggravate the situation. Therefore, we need to become better. And that is why I'm talking about self-development, which of course carrying boundaries and limitations in behavior. However, these restrictions provide opportunities. For example, there are such characteristics as politeness, restraint, understanding that there are a lot of opinions. This is the absence of causticity, haste, sarcasm, and rudeness. Do not use your power for selfish purposes, including whims or satisfying the ego. Do not justify in any way liberties, whims, or disrespectful attitude. To me, this means a high level of awareness when you understand the desire for your actions and the motives for your behavior. People often do what they want and not how to do it right. They do not think, do not analyze, but simply do it, out of laziness, out of desire, out of whim. Thus, when some success is achieved, these negative qualities become strongly manifested. Therefore, it is necessary to analyze who you are. In many ways, the hour of silence helps with this. This is work on yourself, which I suggested in the video number 3 and number 45. Think not only about reputation, but about who you are regardless of reputation. Reputation is what people think of you. You can create an image and follow the rules while maintaining your reputation, but it will be a mask. Yes, it will be suitable for others, for your business, for creating a certain image as a person and way of life. But who you are behind the mask? What are your principles, character, goals, shortcomings? After all, you live this life, not your image on social networks. Accept criticism adequately. As I said above, criticism can be the bile of a person dissatisfied with life. But this may be the truth that you yourself wanted to hear, because you really decided to take responsibility for bringing your opinion, creativity, and influence on other people into this world. In both cases, you should listen to what you feel. Perhaps not always take it seriously. Perhaps consult with friends, specialists, a psychologist about how much the criticism reflects the truth and how much it hurts you and why. It is worth remembering that the influence of criticism on a person can be extremely destructive, even fatal, so you need to work with it and not just feel aggression or self-criticism. It is advisable to be a specialist or professional in some field. It just makes your life better. Besides the fact that you can work in your specialty, you can share knowledge, you can earn a living and not be dependent on channel profits. And you have a knowledge, base and experience, and there is value in your work. In this case, criticism is not that scary, then there will be people who will appreciate your work and not criticize your expression of yourself. Give honest advertising. Then you will not participate in the indirect sale of low-quality goods, and you will gain the trust of your viewers, and the advertiser will know that you will not advertise everything and will appreciate you. I believe that a blogger should follow the etiquette and accept these rules. However, they are not accepted since there are no developed standards of what responsibility is, how it manifests itself, and whether it really exists. If you treat other people in bad faith, you can get rid of this responsibility especially since it is not often indicated anywhere, not written down anywhere, and there are no parameters to measure it in a specific value. Therefore, a blogger can get out of an unpleasant situation and continue his life by changing the direction of his activity. Even if hundreds of thousands of people unfollow a blogger and he loses part of his profit, sometimes people who were treated unfairly do not consider this is enough and resort to lynching. So be careful about what you do. How do you think it is possible to build a system for measuring human actions and activities if measurement in the current currency doesn't work? The current system of values and finances is very distorted and can be interpreted in the way that suits those who have money. As an example, you can consider Monero. My takeaway from this video is that a blogger should strive for the highest level of awareness possible. What does this mean in concrete actions? So, do you have answers for the following questions? Why are you blogging? What values do you convey there? Do you understand who you are and your approach to life without a blog? Is blogging a source of income for you, or are you planning to make it a source of income? What lengths are you willing to go to in order to profit from an advertiser or collaboration? Will your blog presentation and format change? Do you think through each of your posts and videos? Do you choose words and visuals? Do you understand that low moral words, actions, photos have a destructive effect on society? Even if you have 10 subscribers, the algorithms of social platforms still consider which content is prevalent. Do you respect your viewer? For real, do you appreciate him? Or is an individual viewer just a number of subscribers for you? Do you control your words and reactions when communicating with subscribers, advertisers, and any people? The answers to these questions will help you to understand whether the activities on your blog are aimed at self-development for you and others. If you think that our world is not ideal, that there are many problems in it, if you think that our world is unfair, if you have something to be horrified, surprised, and complain about, then change your approach to being on social networks. Yes, this is you, my viewer, who shall change your approach. And this is the minimum you can do to at least somehow slow down the degradation of humanity. And if you think that our world is ideal, then write in the comments why. It was Valeria, the Off-Road Range. Wish you all the best and see you soon.